You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1338. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. We are right around the corner from the 7-figure practice retreat in the Dominican Republic. So in just a couple days here, we're going to be flying out to that. So super excited. Also, if you haven't signed up for the group practice conference, which is happening here in Traverse City, Michigan, May 4th and 5th, 2026, you can grab your ticket over at grouppracticeconference.com. Make sure you grab that today. About half of those are sold at the time of this recording. So you're going to want to grab that as soon as possible. Well, I'm so excited to have Kelsey Blahnik with me today, who is a LCSW-S, is a clinician and author committed to bringing peace into our politically divided world. Kelsey leads a thriving group practice called The And Way Therapy with 10 clinicians serving clients across Florida and Texas with extensive experience in behavioral health over the past 15 years, including work with substance use, homelessness, and veterans. She's seen firsthand how disconnection and polarization affect both individuals and communities. Kelsey also partners with Love Anyway, co-hosting reconciliation gatherings that model assertive peacemaking and courageous dialogue. Her work centers on equipping others to engage conflict with steadiness and compassion, transforming moments of tension into opportunities for connection. And her new book is The And Way, Assertive Peacemaking in a Divided World. Kelsey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, how did you get into assertive peacemaking?
You know, it found me. I just naturally have learned over the years that being assertive in my relationships has benefited me so much. And then after living in so many different places where I was in blue places, red places, purple places, and everywhere I went, I found people that are good people that I love. And we disagreed on many things with. And so I was able to use that assertive dialogue and maintain relationship while still holding on to my convictions. And it's allowed those relationships to be a lot richer.
Yeah. Well, let's start with what gets people to stop talking to each other.
I think right now, one of the themes that I see is this celebration of boundaries, which is such a wonderful thing. It's something that I'm so glad that we are emphasizing, that we're all now being able to communicate better what our needs are. But in an effort to sometimes be able to identify our feelings and wants, sometimes that means people are pulling away and isolating a lot more. I think that we're not talking as much because we're isolating, or we're assuming that we're going to get shut down. We're assuming that other people aren't going to change anyway, so why even try? I think a combination of those things are different reactions people have to the possibility of conflict.
Yeah. Well, what you just said, people aren't going to change, so why even try? How important is it to know if you want to change someone in a relationship versus just trying to hear them and understand them?
Oh, huge. And that's a big part of this concept with the And Way is introducing change and acceptance. And so being able to accept the lack of control we have over the other person, the other person's beliefs, the other person's willingness to engage. You know, I can be as assertive as I can follow all the rules, you know, to be as clear in my communication as possible, as kind in my communication as possible. And the other person could still blow me off, or they could still blow up. I don't have control over that other person. So that acceptance piece is really tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So what are maybe some techniques or things that you've seen work in building those connections as you have these conversations with people?
Yeah, one of the things that I really emphasize in this work is self-healing leads to world healing. So a lot of us want to go out and when I talk about my book, people go, "Oh, I know somebody else who needs that book." And we want to look at how can somebody else do something different. And so I encourage people to look inward first. What are the things that are activating you when controversial topics come up? What are your tendencies to look inward and go, there's maybe a part of me that wants to shut down. There's a part of me that wants to blow up. There's a part of me that wants to pretend like I agree with everybody around me. There's a part of me that just shuts down. And so being able to identify those reactions and then decide when it's going to feel like it's in integrity with yourself, when it's in line with your values, when it's in line with also the circumstance, the power dynamic that's at play, and depending on the scenario, that's going to build our ability to have really productive conversations. If we don't have that self-awareness piece first, we're going to go in and get activated, and it's going to be really hard in that moment to then do something different.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm thinking about some of the folks that I've interviewed kind of in the last couple months where, we've talked about all sorts of different political things. And I forgot which conversation it was, but I was talking with someone about how we were talking about being a environmentally sensitive therapist. And so understanding climate change, understanding what's happening in the world, and kind of not just telling people, oh, just, get over your anxiety, get over your worry, that there's genuine concerns in the world, and validating that as a therapist. With looking at just, research shows that across the globe, authoritarianism is rising and people are concerned about that. How do you think through genuine concerns about not necessarily like just the Trump administration, but and I know that we're not going to get into like which side, but just concerns globally over if that's happening, I'm concerned about it. And then if people are aligning with that, it just feels like, well, should we call that out in our friends and neighbors, or should we just kind of play that middle ground? Like, how do you sort through that when there are genuine concerns in the world?
Oh, absolutely. So are you talking more in the therapy space when it's our client or when it's
Yeah,
a
good clarifier. I guess I'm just thinking in general conversations with friends. Like if you're advising a client in regards to them, they're on one side of the political spectrum. They say, the other side is doing things that we think isn't good for the world. It's, moving towards, away from what we believe that the United States should be, for example.
Yes.
Whatever that looks like. And they feel like there's these genuine concerns in the world. How do you then have assertive peacemaking while preserving that relationship, while also being able to maybe call someone out on like, the person you're following is not helpful for the world?
Yes. So that comes down to holding those convictions very closely and continuing to express those. I am a big fan of engagement rather than passivity, and I think that to me is one of the two core pieces of what is causing so much division, in my opinion, right now, is when we're engaging with people, or when we're talking with people, but we're not actually expressing our concerns. What's happening with all that passivity is it's leading to repression of feelings. We're going back to our echo chambers and then processing it with all people that agree with us. So I really encourage engagement by expressing your differing opinion to your loved one, to your, this person that you're speaking with, by being curious first about where they're at, so that we're not assuming. I think that that's one of the other things that really gets us in trouble, is assuming that if someone voted for a certain candidate, that means they're 100% aligned with what they're doing. So being curious about, do you even agree with what's happening? Do you agree with the way the president said this? Do you agree with the way that this is being handled? And allowing someone to actually share their personal nuanced relationship with a policy, as opposed to all the assumptions that can lead us to isolating further. And then within that curiosity, being willing to say things like, I wonder if you have considered blank, or are you open to hearing my opinion on that? Or I actually read a really interesting article. Would you be open to me sharing it? That has a different perspective on this issue. Or I heard you say that blank, blank, blank. I really don't think that that's true. This is why. Or I'm actually really surprised to hear you say that, because I know you to be such a kind, loving person. And what you just said seems really contradictory to that, or really, really painful for me to hear, because, I have a loved one would really be hurt by what you just said. Those kind of things. Those are a lot of different examples, but definitely engaging assertively to me means holding those convictions and sharing those.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the techniques you talk about in the book?
Yeah, so the first half of the book is all about the self-healing piece. It's about looking inward at how can I first make sure that I am able to regulate myself in order to approach these conversations in a productive way. So we start with an introduction to IFS and dialectic. So with IFS, it's a lot of parts language. And the reason why that's so critical to the N-way is that it's all about looking at the complexity within me as a human so that I can look at the complexity in other humans instead of looking and pointing at someone and saying, oh, they're hypocritical for doing XYZ. I can look at myself and see the hypocrisy, which is actually just inner conflict. I could see, for example, I care so much about the environment, and I go to Whole Foods and I buy a bunch of stuff in plastic and take it home and eat it, right? And so I have all this inner conflict of competing impulses that say I care about something, I want to protect the earth, and I'm prioritizing convenience in this moment. I have these competing values. And so once I'm able to acknowledge that and show compassion to myself and really figure out what my values are and how I want to operate in the world, then I'm going to have a lot more compassion for other people trying to do that too.
Yeah, I think that idea of, we're all going through like different struggles, and it's really interesting because, as we learn more about other people's stories, it's a lot harder to demonize them. And I think that,
Absolutely.
and I think understanding like what's motivating certain things. And so it's like, even looking at my neighbor who had very different political signs in his front yard than what I have. We're both guys that value our family. We're both guys that value economic stability. We both live in Northern Michigan and like being outside. And so it's like, we can still be neighbors and not get into the politics that I think that we have very different points of view on.
Absolutely.
How important is it to actually like engage in that political discussion with neighbors instead of just saying, well, we have common things in common, we should just avoid the conversation?
I think it's really important. I think it is critical to our healing because as a community, and I don't think it needs to be that we constantly have those conversations with everyone. I think there's a pendulum we could swing on to another extreme where we don't need to be talking about it all the time. I also even think with intimate relationships with people that we have, if you know that your family members, for example, if you know already where you guys stand, it doesn't need to be the topic that's brought up every single day. It's important to build some connection outside of these tough conversations. It's so important. Sometimes you have to build a little rapport before digging into something deep too. But I think the avoidance of certain topics with the people you disagree with, and then going off to the group that you do know you can trust because they're going to agree with you, is the dynamic that is getting us really stuck. I think we're kind of word vomiting with the people that we and labeling that other group oftentimes with the people that we agree with, and avoiding those tough topics. It's limiting the opportunities for us to have really creative solutions and be able to actually express some of the pain to people that otherwise wouldn't know what our experience is like on another side of an issue.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to expand your private pay caseload? Check out Thrizer. Thrizer helps clients better navigate their out-of-network benefits and takes the entire burden of insurance off of them. That means no more super bills, no more insurance calls, and the best part, no more long reimbursement waits. Chances are you're providing a super bill to your clients. Super bills can be extremely overwhelming and challenging for your clients to navigate, let alone needing to wait months for that reimbursement check. Thrizer provides automatic claim submissions, manages claims end-to-end, and the best part, allows clients to just pay a copay for your session, while Thriver covers the rest of your rate up front and waits for the reimbursement on your client's behalf. This is called Thrizer Pay and is already helping thousands of clients access therapy without needing to be out hundreds of dollars while waiting for reimbursement. It's the best way to make your services more accessible and increase your private pay caseload, hands down. Use the promo code POP for a free trial. That's POP, Practice of the Practice, POP. You'll receive waived credit card fees for your first $2,500 in charges. Time to thrive with Thrizer. Head over to join.thrizer.com/Joe. Again, that's join.thrizer.com/Joe. How important is it to align somewhat politically with your clients? I'm thinking, if someone was a Trump voter and they found out that someone was really left wing and they were their therapist, or vice versa, you're a progressive and then you find out that there's a Trump voter that's your therapist. How important is that to know those things versus to not?
Yeah. It is so hard. I think that it depends so much on how is it that somebody knows that about you? Is it because the policy that they're upholding or the language that they're using is indirect, is dehumanizing, then that's going to be a direct impact on your client. And so that's very important to distinguish, that if a client feels unsafe, regardless, that's okay, that they feel the need to find somebody that they feel completely safe with. And I think there are opportunities where I've had beautiful experiences with clients that know that we are politically not aligned, not because I've told them who I voted for, but because they, have seen some of the language that I use on either on social media there, or the pronouns at the end of my name, and they make assumptions and they go, oh, well, I know you don't feel the same way about me on this. And it's an opportunity to see, well, here's something that we don't agree on. And then there's all of this relationship. There's all this history that shows to one another we're humans in this world together, learning a lot from each other and continuing to still find connection in the midst of that. And I think that can also be a powerful tool for that a person to develop more psychological flexibility and to be able to continue in a relationship with someone that's not 100% aligned with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you think about your team, you've got a large group practice. How do you teach the team these concepts?
Yeah. So I have, I'm ASWB approved as a CEU provider. So I have CEUs on the intersection of politics, ethics, and therapy. And we go through trainings to learn about this PERTS language, how we apply that to ourselves, how we apply that to our clients, how we practice change and acceptance. And, I'll pause on that for just a moment, because something you asked earlier reminded me of that. When it comes to our clients that are truly terrified of what is happening politically at any point, and you can validate this is understandable why you're feeling scared. That change and acceptance piece can be really useful, because we're not trying to accept as in invalidate the fears that somebody has. We are just trying to be able to get to a point where somebody can still put one foot in front of the other and find a way to access change, even if it's in a small way today. I can show my neighbors love. I can not use labels to talk about other people. And I have to accept political polarization isn't going away tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So being able to practice that change and acceptance piece with our clients when they're on the receiving end of that pain is a really useful tool, because we've gotten a lot of people in the last year coming in crisis and not feeling like there's really no amount of validation that's going to make that fear go away, because it's reality. And then we work through practicing and role playing what assertive communication is like, identifying how we feel and what we want, identifying in that therapeutic dynamic when it's appropriate to, call in something that a client says. Those are some of the tools that we use.
Yeah. So tell me about some of the shifts that you've seen in having more assertive peacemaking. Like, what does that look like in maybe your own personal life?
The thing that I see most is beautiful to witness is that I really believe psychological flexibility is the goal. And it is something that's going to really allow us to continue to transform as a species, as a human species, and allow us to find more healing and less division. as a society. And so I've seen a lot of that happen where people don't make the assumption that because I voted this way, that's all of these labels are who I am, or for specifically that means that I'm not going to be willing to hear them out, or I'm not going to be willing to treat them with dignity, because I'm not going to just hurl insults or labels back at them. So that watching people make assumptions of how I'm going to engage, and then seeing that kind of get watered down and then go, oh, I actually could talk to someone on the other side, quote unquote. And this could actually be fruitful. That's refreshing. And so seeing people open up to that has been really wonderful. And then the other thing that I really see is the depth in relationship that it gives me, like aside from politics, aside from only controversial topics, by engaging assertively, I have more intimate relationships, period. I really believe that relationships with accountability are the ones that can be intimate. And so the relationships where I haven't been shoving things under the rug and ignoring and being passive and just kind of, ruminating, that doesn't lead to as deep of relationships as the ones where I've gone, hey, I noticed that you responded that way. I'm not sure what happened there. Can you tell me more? Or I felt really hurt when this happened. I'd like, blank in order to repair. All those uncomfortable conversations have been really healing.
What does healthy assertiveness look like? Because I think that sometimes when people haven't been assertive, the pendulum swings so much. You were even talking earlier about boundaries and this whole like I'm me, and like I mean I have been in relationships where someone says, "Well, I'm just speaking my truth," and it's like, "Well, that's your truth, but you're being an a-hole about it." Like that's
Yeah.
fine, and then it's like, it's just because you're not used to women speaking up, and I'm like, no, it's just that you're being mean. Like it's so it's like, how do you find healthy assertiveness? Also understanding that as a white dude, I have a lot of privilege, and so there may be newer language around that. It may just, I guess, I'll go back to my question instead of rambling. Like, what does healthy assertiveness look like?
Yes, yes. And you made a great point there that just to touch on that for a second, that with privilege comes a power dynamic that a lot of people don't have access to. So sometimes being assertive isn't something someone has access to. Sometimes passivity is a survival instinct. And so I want to just, leave that there too. When we do have the opportunity to be assertive, and I encourage people to engage in this way as often as they possibly and safely can, it looks like being able to not just put in the complaint, also put in the request. And I think that that's something we're missing culturally right now. We are getting really good at identifying complaints, at being able to express ourselves. We're forgetting that to come up with solutions and come up with a request. Now, this is what I need, or this is what I'd like to see in order to repair. And so one of my favorite questions to ask couples or to ask an individual I'm working with when they're in a relational struggle is, what would you need to see in order to feel repaired? And for one person, that's a direct apology. For somebody else, that's a time apart. For somebody else, that's witnessing them repeatedly making a different choice than that hurtful one. And for everyone, that looks different. And I think we skip that step sometimes of being able to identify what we would actually need to repair, asking for it, and then sticking around long enough to see if the other person's willing to meet them there.
What would you need to see to feel repair?
This is what I do with my kids. I have a 9 and 11-year-old.
Oh, I have 11 and 14. So,
oh, cool. Yeah. So we don't do the say sorry. I say, do you feel repaired? And they've got to think about it for a second to see if they actually feel repaired or not. And it's kind of amazing because sometimes they're like, yeah, mom, we just want to play on the trampoline now. They're ready to move on. And then other times they're like, you can tell there's still some ick, they want to see the other person really gets that they were hurt. So they need something else.
That's great. Taking a bunch of notes here. Well, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, Kelsey, what would you want them to know?
One of the things is your presence is enough. I think that was something I learned as a young therapist, that we can have all these cool tools. Your presence is, truly being attuned to that. The other person is so meaningful. And also that piece about repair is so critical. Let's not just emphasize the boundaries and the isolation and only identifying our own needs. Let's also emphasize repair in our communities.
So good. If people want to get the book, if they want to follow your work more, where should we send them?
Yes, you can go to theandwaypress.com or theandwaytherapy.com to find my practice. And you can also follow me on Instagram at theandway.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
I think that one thing that's really inspiring about what Kelsey talked through is not only finding what your practice is doing, but then finding the broader thing that applies to society. What are we doing with our clients that then could become a book, could become a TED Talk, could become a course or continuing ed? Looking at what Kelsey's built, she's building things that come from her practice, but then go into much different areas than just on the couch. So I think it's important to start to notice these things that you're doing, because the world needs different thinkers. We need to have ways of training people. We need to have different ways of challenging the way that therapy has been done. That's how therapy moves forward, is by people saying, what if we tried this a little bit differently? And we documented it, and we shared it with people, and trained people. And over time, maybe we have good research on it. Those are all things that can then help you grow your business, but also can help society at large. So I want to encourage you to take some inspiration from Kelsey today. Go start documenting some of the things that are happening in therapy, and maybe you've got a book inside of you. If you do reach out to us, we do consulting around that sort of stuff all the time, whether it's podcasts or other things. Also, we couldn't do this show without Thrizer. Thrizer helps you get out-of-network benefits paid for so much faster. They do automatic claim submissions. They manage claims end-to-end. And the best part is it allows clients to just pay a copay for the session, but Thrizer covers the rest of your rate up front. So you get that money up front for your private pay. If you want to receive waived credit card fees for your first $2,500 in charges, head on over to join.thrizer.com/Joe. It's time to thrive with Thrizer in 2026. So again, that's join.thrizer.com/Joe. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.